Just don't mind. I'm just going to cover your face for a bit. I don't know whether it's legal to film if I can see myself. Um, just going to use the cover for the car air vent. The phone mount that I've got. Uh, for those of you who don't know the law, you're allowed to film yourself while you're driving, but you are not allowed to see yourself on the camera while you do so. So I've just made a little makeshift phone cover out of my box because I can't lock my screen while I do this. So anyway, fellas, my name is Ryan. Welcome to Forbidden Cards or Forbidden Card Slots, and I'm hoping to introduce you all to a series of videos. I'll make sure this is recording. Yeah, it is. Hoping to introduce you. Yeah, hoping to introduce you all to a series of videos where I weaponize the hour and a half it takes me to get home on the Monash Freeway, and for anyone who lives in Melbourne in Australia understands what a pain that road could be at 5:30 in the evening. I've decided to weaponize that time because I simply am doing nothing else other than listening to Josh Richmond and Alpha Investments videos. So I figure I might pick a topic every day and try and get a bit passionate to you all, and without having to do any of these nasty introductions. Uh, Once you've seen one of these, you've seen them all. But I want to talk today about YCS Anaheim. And I will edit these to cut out all the dead air, so you're welcome. I don't even know if I'm covering the microphone. God, that could be pretty bad, couldn't it? Move this over a little bit. When we get the box to the frame, I have no idea. Anyway, YCS Anaheim wrapped up yesterday afternoon for us Australians. And I must say, the event was run extremely well. I was very impressed with the coverage, minus some technical issues, which I think they covered for very well. I felt like the stream had a lot of content filling the gaps, much like the European streams, and it wasn't trivia and nonsense. It was a lot of we pre-recorded some games, or we had a second stream going just in case the original feature match closed up early. Which I respect incredibly. It was the first YCS stream I really tuned into and got invested in. Mostly because it started at like 4 o'clock in the morning, which meant I got to watch all of the finals while I work, and I got to watch all of the or most of day one on Sunday during the day, which was very nice, very convenient. For those of you who do live in Australia, you understand how hard it is to watch a stream that's based in Europe or the US because the time zones mean we can never catch it live without staying up late or early, getting up early. But yeah, props to the coverage team for that. A lot of personality in this year, and save even for the fact that we got a ban list reveal live after. Konami's actually steadily been improving their level of communication with the players, which is incredible. And for those of you who don't know, there is a ban list out. I don't know whether this is going to be the right video for it, because really I don't think it's worth a whole lot of discussion. I think you guys are intelligent enough that you can come to your own conclusions about what the ban list is going to do to the format. Just casually running a red light. Come on, there we go. But I want to talk mostly about the players, about event preparation, and about why I think the decks that did well did well. And I think we are finally visiting an era of the players who play the highest volume of games seeing the most success at the tournament level. Firstly, let's get the player hating out of the way. I think the Tenpai player Nicholas carried himself extremely poorly in every game that he was viewed on stream. He was very, very curt, very rude, very abrupt with the opponents. He didn't seem to accept when games weren't going his way, holding his head in his hands. He was carrying himself visually very poorly. And I think that is a bit of a skill to avoid looking so down while you are playing a children's card game. And let's be honest with ourselves, it is still a children's card game. You're playing for a set of dice and a special card you can look at. And Nicholas is out here uh, looking like he's got the loan sharks waiting outside for him to hand over an ultra rare copy of another verse Solaria. And if he doesn't, his parents are going to get turned into mints. Unfortunately, uh, and not every player can get around this. A lot of players wear their heart on their sleeve, but I just think Nicholas just was very disrespectful for a lot of the tournament. I think for Triff um, to handle the match ending the way that he did, he was extremely consolative. He was extremely respectful to Nicholas as an opponent. To everyone he played on stream, he was extremely respectful, which is not something that I was expecting. I appreciate that Triff is a public figure and that it is in his best interest to be viewed in a positive light. But at the end of the day, I was very, very impressed with how Triff conducted himself, both in his speed of gameplay, his technical abilities, even the deck profile he did afterwards. I think was extremely respectful. I think he knows what to look out for now these days, as to not get in trouble. I'm not sure whether it was him that we heard scream "Let's fucking go," and after the results of the top four match. I don't think it was. I think someone else screamed it. But I think everyone put on a very good performance. Everyone was quite happy to be there, except for the runner-up, whose deck immediately got fisted once the finals had concluded, which was really the moment we were all waiting for. But huge congratulations to Triff. Not that he's going to watch this video, and I don't encourage sending it to him because you know, he's leagues above me at this point in time in terms of his technical play. So don't go and send him my video on Runic Stun. But let's talk about the decks. To no one's surprise, Malice and Ryziel were rising stars in this event, almost to the point where the ban list seemed somewhat punitive rather than rehabilitative toward the Snake Eye deck. Oh, and Tempai, not forgetting. Now we saw a couple of different versions of Ryziel. I having not tested the matchup or the deck exclusively for the last couple of months, didn't even really consider the Fiendsmith engine as a viable non-engine slot or engine slash non-engine slot for the deck. I think the way it works is extremely cool. I didn't even consider the Light Fiend pool, including Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, because all of the Evil Swarms are dark. And again, I won't even pretend that I was thinking about a Light Fiend that could bridge in from an Exceed monster, because so many of those cards lock you into rank 4s out of the extra deck that you forget that some of those effects will just generate two bodies for you, which could have been Closed Moon, but in this case was Exciton. Maybe I think did Triff play Closed Moon? I'm not too sure. But Ryziel doing as well as it did certainly was expected. But that's not what interests me about the event. I think we are finally seeing the rise of players who are getting their experience from just playing as many games as humanly possible. For those of you who don't have a testing group or who don't belong to some part of a sponsored team, you're left wondering, well, how am I meant to improve at this game? I've got an event coming up. I really desperately need to get better at this deck. What do I do? People are understandably not really that interested in playing Dueling Book. Dueling Book being a manual simulator for the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, it is a decent analog for building the decks and getting in some practice games. But overall, when you are playing, 30 games a day, you encounter your fair share of people who don't know how to play the game, people who are willing to cheat, people who are willing to stall you out off of a result, um, lack of judges or admins willing to help or jump on your calls. And ultimately, you are relying on your opponent's ability to understand the game in order to have a fruitful experience. And you should also know how all the cards work to ensure that doesn't become as painful as possible. But a lot of these, I think DP Grinder has almost ushered in an era of you should grind as many games on DB as possible because that is going to give you the largest or the widest breadth of game experience that you can then bring into a tournament setting. You can do combos on the kitchen table if you like to. I'm a big fan of a danger combo on the kitchen table. But ultimately, if you want to play against real people, you just have to go and find those real people to play against. And while you can go and find your mates and practice against them, sad to say, not all of your friends are going to be as good at the game as maybe you might be hoping to test against. If you open yourself up to a wider group of people to play against, and not just at locals or in your testing group, you are more likely to find the very tippy top of the cream of all the players who are actually trying to play. I think there's incredible advantage in that first week after a ban list drops, which we're now in, to get on Dueling Book and grind out as many games as possible so that you can be higher in the rating when all of those other players grind up. That way, once you get to 600, 700 plus, every game you're experiencing is going to be of some value to you. Plus, with Dueling Book doesn't need to be an isolated experience. It could easily be, I've got my friends around, and we're all talking about what the right play is, or we're all reviewing our replays, and Dueling Book has that replay feature as well, which I think you should use liberally. Like, you should always go back and review a game to see how it is you won or why it is you lost, because then you can learn to avoid or minimize the variance in those situations. And because you're hitting so many games, you understand better what ratios in your deck you need to draw the cards or not draw the cards that you want. Not every game is going to be super valuable to you, but if you are an Australian duelist and you go to a YCS in a tier 0 format, you will still play 6 to 7 different decks. I'll use an example. YCS Sydney, 2023, last year, at the height of Tearlament Shizu format, I did exactly 5 matches worth of testing on Dueling Book, and I concluded that was about it for me. Had a 6-month-old son at home. I only just purchased the cards. I just arrived. I'm just traveling with a friend of mine. Very casual experience. And on day 1 of what we are calling a tier 0 format, I played against Sword Soul, Tyr, Sprite, Plants, Kashtira, Mermail, and 2 other random, I can't even remember what the cards were. I played 8 different decks on day 1. Oh, Phantom Nine. And Bubbling Out on day 2. Now, did I deserve to top that event? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's because I hadn't played a good enough volume of games. I think the way that newer players, 1 to 2 years, need to start getting better at the game is take a proven list in the current format, which for us can just be, be Truth's list or Christopher's list from top 4, or there was a couple of Malice Skystriker lists, particularly the one that came first in Swiss. You can take any of those lists, whatever you fancy, because they have proven results, and you just start throwing those in games. It's not a difficult thing to do, not a difficult concept that practice makes perfect. And a lot of people show up to events sort of unprepared, but like they don't know how unprepared they are, because it's like asking someone, "Hey, what can you tell me what you don't know about mathematics?" No one's going to be able to tell you what they don't know. They might be able to tell you what they do know, but it's almost like asking someone almost like asking someone to describe a color they've never seen before. It's impossible. You only know about something if you have experienced it, either by watching someone play, or experiencing yourself, or being told by another player, or reading the rule book. Like in some way, shape, or form, you have to have experienced the gameplay in order to effectively use the gameplay. Don't think you're going to be fucking super genius over here, and all of a sudden pull a sick play out of thin air. It can happen. It absolutely can happen. But don't bank on it happening at a tier two. Don't bank on it happening at a tier 2 event or higher, because you're going to leave yourself disappointed. Get your volume of games in and play as much as you can. And I think that's why Triff deserved the win. Perhaps more so than some of the other players in the room. I think he had a cooler deck. The only people I would have preferred to see get there, I love seeing Joshua Schmidt just take wins because of the way he approaches games. But let America have the YCS this time around. In terms of the other decks in the room, I'm very uninterested in the U-Bell deck. The U-Bell deck, now with only one Phantom, I think is perfectly fine. I wouldn't play it over Ryziel, mostly because I think Ryziel is a much easier deck, and allows for better testing. And when I say better testing, what I mean is, if you are a U-Bell player and your combo takes 15 minutes to execute, 15 minutes, a bit of a hyperbole. If your combo takes 15 minutes to execute, you have to remember that's 15 minutes of time spent playing the game. Whereas your Ryziel combo is only going to take you 3 minutes. The hand traps depending, of course. With that extra 12 minutes, you're playing a considered back and forth game with your opponent. You're gaining a lot more experience in that extra 12 minutes worth of gameplay than if you did if your opponent just let you combo off and then conceded. So part of your deck building process, or part of the deck building process for this YCS is deciding, well, I've got 5 decks in front of me that I've never touched. Should I play the deck that allows me to practice it as much as possible, as quickly as possible? Or should I play a deck that is proven to be powerful, but has a very long, very considered combo that might take me a little bit longer to execute, and possibly has more mistakes or more forks in the road along the way, more decision trees along the way? Personally, I see a lot of interest in the Ryziel deck just because I think there's a problem to be solved in the deck's consistency and the way it plays. But people have been playing this deck more than me. I am equipped with the Ryziel cards now, and I can start practicing the deck in person. which is probably all I'll limit myself to, except for the month up to the YCS. But let's talk about the other decks. Like I said, I don't care for you, Bell, and now you don't even need to think about playing against Fire King or Snake Eye. And I think the banning of original Sinful Spoils is that's enough. That kills that deck. I think it even kills the wanted slash Azamina engine as a whole. Because consider that every other deck in the room is playing some 12 to 18 hand traps, and every single card in that wanted engine slash Azamina engine costs you an additional card to play. There might be powerful effects, but it costs you an additional card to play. Now, I'm not going to pretend this is a unique thought that I've just come up with, but if half the room is maining Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, I sure as fuck don't want to be putting down Deception. If well, is it Deception of the Sinful Spells? Anyway, if I put down a Deception and pitch a card for cost and go Ghost Ogre, I now have 3 cards in my hand. If I have Witch in hand, that costs me another card, and it's just as likely to get negated by an Imperm or a Mourner or a Veiler, and all of a sudden I'm in the hole and I have 2 cards, Witch in hand and Witch on field and 1 in hand. And my deck now does not access the very powerful level 1 fire engine that it used to. Also, quick tangent on the Rescue Ace deck. We're not going to bother with Rescue Ace. 3 airlift doesn't matter when original Sinful Spells can now no longer access Fire Hydrant. If you think that deck is going to be good, that's perfectly fine. You can tell me about what you got from your participation packs at the end of round 4. I have to be mean because your friends won't be. The other decks, Malice. Now, I was originally very interested in the way the Malice deck plays. I thought the banishing, constantly recurring themselves, was an incredibly cool way to play the game, and I was in love with the theme. The Alice in Wonderland theme mixed with cyberpunk, or whatever we're calling it. I think it was a very cool theme, and it initially drew me to the deck. And then I realized the accepted way to play the deck was just to Cyberse combo into Terahertz and send Devathworm or whatever the fuck it's called. And I immediately lost all interest in playing the deck. I'm sure there is a more grindy, less high ceiling way to play the deck, but Terahertz as a card does not interest me at all. And I just simply cannot play a deck that my opponent can stop me on their turn 0 with a hand trap that I'm not going to be playing for crossout, or that could negate a crossout. Lancia is one of the only hand traps in the game that can out its own outs. A second Lancia, I believe you can activate 2 Lancia. A second Lancia can in fact prevent the first Lancia from being crossout designated or called by it, and really will just end the turn. Whereas D-Barrier can only affect the Raziel deck if your opponent has gone first, and in some cases has gone second. And your opponent's just a based individual. What other decks were there? Pure Kashtira? Is that a deck? No. The Pure Fiendsmith deck. I think it was perfectly fine to take a Pure Fiendsmith to this event. I still think it grinds very well. And if the theory is you just want a deck that consumes the highest volume of hand traps, either that your cards trade evenly or they trade up, I think Fiendsmith is still a perfectly reasonable deck to play, um, while maintaining a healthy amount of non-engine cards, which you can be used as engine in a pinch, or just to stop your opponent from playing a full turn. We are well into the era of defeating half boards and trying to prevent your opponent from having follow up. It is kind of reminiscent uh, in Zodiac in that way, where I don't think a turn two is so much focused on ending the game on the spot as much as making it look unwinnable for your opponent on turn three. I think the question that decks will need to answer in the coming months is, what engine cards can I use to fill the space once the Fiendsmith engine is gone, or is Fiendsmith the right engine to combine with the Ryziel deck? I personally would like to try the Kashtira and the Runic engines. Runic being a little less stable, only really providing it as a sort of pseudo instant fusion engine. But things I would like to test in the next couple of months. Look, I think I've been talking for long enough. Remember that this channel is linked to an eBay store, Forbidden Card Slots. I'm just about to list all of the leftover cards from my case of crossover breakers after all of the Facebook sales, etc. Um, I was extremely fortunate to have gotten a couple of very, very nice, very choice quarter century rares from my set, and we're now positive on the purchase of the case. But I'm hoping to bring you some gameplay for Ryziel soon. That's probably going to be the only deck I touch for the next 3 months, so apologies to anyone who hates Exceed monsters. I'll spare you the I'll spare you the slur jokes. But thank you for joining. I've been your fella. Jump on Forbidden Card Slots on eBay, buy a few cards, send me some awful feedback, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.